Welcome to the Illuminate series, 15-minute fireside chats about lighting and you. We are about to start session 2, examining the topic lighting and the environment. In this session, Alyssa Amor Gibbons, lead accredited professional, and Peter Maxson, director of the Brussels-based consultancy Concord East-West and consultant to the United Nations Environment Programme, will discuss the impacts of mercury-based fluorescent lighting on the environment. Azel Francis is our moderator. Azel, over to you. Let's illuminate.
Welcome to Illuminate Lighting and the Environment. My name is Azel Francis, and today I am joined by Peter Maxson, Director of the Brussels-based consultancy Concord East-West and consultant to the United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP. I am also joined by Alyssa Amor Gibbons, a Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED, accredited professional in building design and construction, homes, and a LEED Green Rater. We are going to have a 15-minute quick fire discussion on the impacts that mercury-based fluorescent lighting can have on the environment. LED lighting is mercury-free, therefore mitigating the risk of mercury leaching into the ecosystem where it can harm human and environmental health. The conversation will explore how a transition to LED lighting can lead to safer waste stream management and safeguard our ecosystems. Welcome, Peter and Alyssa Amor.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Azel.
Super excited for today's conversation. Let's begin with a question to you, Alyssa Amor. How does mercury-based fluorescent lighting truly affect the environment?
Thanks for that question, Azel. And you kind of briefly touched on it during your intro when you spoke about how do we safeguard our ecosystem, but also the discarding of those types of light specifications. Particularly in the Caribbean, we do not have as efficient waste stream management as one might expect in larger countries, for example. So the kind of leaching, as you mentioned, of the small amounts of mercury and even phosphorus within those fixtures is a problem for us when you think about the indoor air quality. If a light gets broken, say in a hospital, it might seem like a modicum, but it could have a long-reaching effect on occupants of the building. But then when we also think from an architectural design point of view of the benefits of using an alternative, so LEDs, for example, personally, it gives me more control over, say, the color temperature that I can choose for my light specifications. And what that means, if you have the slides up showing that kind of light mapping exercise that we typically do, we literally have to go through and think of not just the impact of the lighting interior, but exterior as well. So in the Caribbean, we have a lot of hospitality projects along the coast, for example, and utilizing LEDs where I can specify more significantly the color temperature. It means that I can choose lighting that is not drawing, for example, marine life back onto shore. And it's kind of a funny story there, sad actually, where we are fighting so hard to choose the right fixtures, specify the correct items, but then, contractors on site may be from Southeast Asia and sea turtles are seen as a delicacy. So they're using different types of lights to draw the sea turtles and actually eat them on site. So roundabout way of saying that everything we do, even the smallest thing as choosing the correct light fixture, significantly impacts the success of a project.
Everything we do has an impact. Peter, do you have anything to add?
That was so well done. I don't have much to add, but two very brief points. The first is that we're exposed in our normal lives to quite a range of different toxic substances, from solvents to lead in paint dust to asbestos, all kinds of things. And the unnecessary use of mercury in lamps, in light bulbs now, just is another thing that we can very easily move beyond and not have to deal with. The other very brief point is that consider what might happen if we were to break one of these fluorescent bulbs, a CFL, in a room where a baby is sleeping. If the room is not ventilated quite quickly or whatever, the baby could be exposed to a level of mercury that's not healthy. And so those are the sorts of things that we have to keep in mind.
Thank you so much. And since we have you on screen, knowing that you have done a lot of work with Mercury and in particular with the Minamata Convention, can you tell us a little bit more about what the Minamata Convention is and its impact or potential impact on the CARICOM region, please?
Yeah, certainly. It's a bit difficult to be brief, but I'll do my best. The overall objective, the overall objective of the convention is quite straightforward: to protect human health and the environment from anthropogenic emissions and releases of mercury and mercury compounds. The convention was adopted in 2013 and it entered into force in 2017. And there are currently 135 parties or individual countries that have ratified the convention. As I said, the convention covers a whole range of mercury uses and releases, but I think the parts most relevant to our discussion today are phasing out the use of mercury in a number of products and processes, actually. Products such as batteries, thermometers, medical devices, electrical switches and relays, and as we're talking today, the use of mercury in fluorescent lighting. The convention also includes measures to phase down the use of mercury in dental work, in dental amalgam, and it has control measures on mercury emissions to the air, like from waste incineration. Mercury releases to land and water are supposed to be better controlled. For example, leaching emissions from landfills that may not be properly designed and managed. And another key point is the collection of used products that have mercury in them, like old batteries and such, and the environmentally safe disposal of these sorts of products. Just very briefly, we're into the fourth international session of the conference, where all of the parties gather from time to time for international meetings. And the next part will be held, the next so-called COP, Conference of the Parties, will be held in Indonesia in March of next year. And it will look very carefully at the revisions to Annexes A and B, among other things. And I raise this point especially because Annex A includes different types of lighting that has mercury in it. And so there are reasons to further reinforce or support and even revise that annex to include other lighting fixtures. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Peter. That was a very concise explanation of that convention. Our next question actually would be shifted to you again, Alyssa Amor. Can you compare the life cycle of LEDs to the life cycle of fluorescent bulbs for us?
Yeah, that's easy. It's quite well documented. It's better, simply put. You can expect LEDs to last, like in testing, say 40,000 hours longer as an average than fluorescent bulbs. If you think of the ratio of 8,000 to 25,000 is typically what they average it at. Or some people might say it lasts, a fluorescent bulb could last, say, 5 years, whereas your LED might last 10 years plus. So it really depends, I guess, on brands, etc. But the general way to think of it is LEDs are better, everyone. LEDs are much better. If you go past the time frame that they last as well, you can say, for example, that the LED components can be recycled and broken down and sorted much easier than the fluorescent bulbs can be as well. And like Peter was spot on when he talked about waste stream and recycling there. The ability to not just build better, specify better, but we need to be considering not the life cycle from cradle to grave, but cradle to cradle. So, what are the opportunities to reuse and re implement materials so that we are reducing the carbon footprint as much as we can in terms of resourcing materials and potentially creating more closed loop systems in the entire building process.
I love that. Instead of thinking about it from we need to start thinking about it from cradle to cradle. That is
Yep.
phenomenal. So our next question will shift to you again, Peter. How can we accelerate this market transition? Given Alyssa's simple statement, LEDs are simply better. How can we accelerate this market transition to the better lighting choice of LEDs, given the multitude of benefits that both you and she have shared today to people and planet?
I would say that as a reference point, the recent report by Click has about a dozen or more recommendations about how to do this. But perhaps the easiest way to look at it for us is at three levels. The first is awareness raising. If we can spread the word to consumers about the advantages of LEDs and the disadvantages of CFLs and other fluorescent lighting, we can already make a big move in the right direction. And to the extent that we have access to cost-effective alternatives for LEDs, I know that's not the case in every city, in every country, but it certainly should be because LEDs are cheaper now than most CFLs. At another level, governments have a lot of purchasing power for street lighting and all kinds of other things. And if we can get the governments to revise their guidelines to favor LEDs over fluorescent lighting, that's another big step in the right direction. And finally, as I mentioned, internationally, if we can support, I should say at the moment, the African region has put together an amendment to Annex A of the Minamata Convention to phase out the use of mercury in lighting. And that could be a very important revision to Annex A. And if other countries can get behind that amendment and further support it, that will help us move ahead with regard to the Minamata Convention.
Thank you, Peter. Alyssa Amor, same question. How can we accelerate the market transition to LEDs, given all of these wonderful benefits that you and Peter have so eloquently elaborated on?
From my point of view, you frame that question as people and planet, and in the triple bottom line, there's also profit. When I'm chatting with clients, I find as well-intentioned as persons might be, they have a budget. And when you start talking about the economic benefits, that's when people start to move. And the kind of global climate, for lack of a better word, is kind of prime for these discussions. But I think the cost savings when you look long term in the operational cost of your facility, in the maintenance and management ongoing of your facility, the more efficient products you use, the better off it will be long term, right? So I think having those open discussions with clients about the trade-offs early in the design process really helps to kind of encourage the transition, so to say.
Absolutely. So we definitely need to be encouraging a long-term vision. We need to be adopting this idea that we have cradle to cradle life cycle discussions. And we need to recognize that the conversation about lighting and the environment isn't only about people and planet, but it also makes economic sense. So it's people, planet, and profit. So thank you both so much for this quick discussion today. We definitely touched on so many key items that will ultimately really impact the Caribbean region as we move from dependence to resilience. So thank you both for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Thank you.